Good afternoon. Before we get underway, Martin Glenn will say a few words, followed by Gareth Southgate, before we open up to the floor. So, without further ado, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I'm here. I'm delighted to be able to announce that this morning we've Gareth and Steve Hahn have signed contracts to extend their stay with the England team until after the World Cup in 2022. So delighted for Gareth and Steve, delighted for the FA. I mean, if you go back to 2016, when Gareth was appointed, there were two important things that we wanted him to do. Well, three really: win games, obviously, but bring youth through. We really felt there's a really talented group of younger players being developed, and giving them a chance to play in the England senior setup we thought was important, and also harness all of the available resources from here, from St George's Park, because the England senior team had been run slightly independently from the St George's Park setup, and we wanted Gareth to bring all that back in. And what I saw, and I was with the team for 5 weeks out in Russia, both on the pitch with the results, but I thought we saw Gareth and Steve brilliantly deploy and harness the resources that a great international technical department could give them. So whether it be the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, the way we really integrated the psychological support into the running of the teams, team operations. We've the whole setup in an unfashionable hotel an hour towards Finland from St Petersburg was a brilliant camp. So I think what that allowed Gareth and Steve to do is really get the best out of that squad, and they gave it both on the pitch. But I think the reason that the performance of the teams resonated so well with the fans over the summer was that people felt that the English team gave heart and soul to every minute, to every match, and I think they did. So we think Gareth and Steve are really the right people to take England further forward. Notwithstanding, Gareth's a great ambassador for the wider remit of the FA. We cover a whole group of areas, whether it be through trying to improve grassroots pitches, and Gareth's a Football Foundation ambassador. But generally, that figurehead is really important. So aside from when he goes out running, he's barely put a foot wrong. And so that's why we're delighted to maintain him and extend his contract to the end of the 22 World Cup. And really, what's it about? Look, you can't guarantee you're going to win a tournament. Every team turns up to try and win it. But I believe we will win a World Cup at some point in the not-too-distant future. But for sure, we're going to turn up to major tournaments, whether it be the Euros in 2020 or the World Cup in 2022, as more consistent challenges. And the expectation should be that we should get to the latter stages. And that consistency is what I think we need now, and that's why I'm delighted we can sign up Gareth and Steve for another 4 years. Thank you.
Martin's brilliant, isn't he? What is there to add? I think from my point of view, I joined as the under-21 head coach and head of the national teams around 5 years ago, and that was an honour because every day you drive through the gates of St George's Park and you feel that you're making a difference to English football. And I feel that over that period, under Dan's leadership as technical director, there's been some significant progress. We were able to move that forward into the senior team over the last 18 months, and I think everybody knows what we're trying to do, the way that we're trying to do that. It's an honour to lead your country, and so to be able to do that for another 4 years is hugely exciting for myself. I couldn't do that without the support of all of the team at St George's Park, and the board have been fantastic in allowing us the freedom to put younger players in, think for the longer term. Steve is clearly a big part of that in terms of my direct support. And so I get to lead and I get to stand here, but I represent all of the team that work with me. And we're only successful because we have got an outstanding support team, as well as some very exciting players who I believe over the next 4 years, with their experiences with us and with their clubs, are going to improve, and I hope continue to excite the English public.
Okay, now we'll allow 10 minutes for questioning. Please use the microphone available and raise your hand if you've got a question. And we'll start with Rob Dorset from Sky Sports News.
Gareth, many congratulations.
Thank you.
A 4-year contract implies a bit of job security, but can there ever be job security when you're the England manager?
Well, I think, as I said just now, the important thing for us has been that there has been a plan, there has been continuity. Since St George's Park was built, the progress of not just the national teams but coach education, the resource that's been put into football has made a huge difference. So I think everybody can sense that there is excitement about what goes on here, and instability is probably the one concern about that. So I'm really pleased that from the senior end we're able to have that stability, and I think it's important that part of my role is to make sure that I connect all of the junior teams up to that. I don't think we stand alone. I think we try and work the same way right the way through the system, and I think the benefits of that are clear for the players and for all of the support team. So yes, of course, anything can happen in football, but we have to keep getting results. We're not naive enough to sit there and say, we can do what we like for the next 4 years, but we're hugely ambitious. In the summer we had a real progress, best outcome for a long time, but we know that there's still a lot of improvement to make, and that includes us as a coaching team, that includes all of our support team, and of course the players who have really bought into everything that we're trying to do, and recognise that there's still a little bit to go to be in amongst the world's best.
Martin, you said very clearly that you haven't set expectations that England need to go and win the World Cup from here, but what specific targets have you discussed for Gareth over that 4-year period?
Well, we, as Gareth said, very well, we have great ambition. We will win a World Cup. We are going to win a Euros. You can't ever say when because it's so competitive, but we are going to give ourselves the best possible chance to make the most of the players we've got to compete in those tournaments. So there aren't any specifics about any stage in the tournament. But I think what we both want to do is see progress, and we can feel progress. I mean, the public can sense it and feel it, the media see it, whether it be the style of play, whether it be the commitment and the way that, frankly, that squad of 23 players behave themselves, and we're an absolute tribute to the country. So we want to see progress on and off the pitch. But on the pitch, I genuinely believe that by banking on continuity with creativity, because Gareth's just not going to continue to repeat in the same things. What we have is, and Gareth is very charitable, he's got a great support team, but people do make results happen, and Gareth and Steve have been instrumental to catalysing what is now a good system to get, I think, some extraordinary results. So, but it is the consistency. And in the past, we've sort of banked on, a messiah coming in, and every new manager came with their own ideas. We're here today at St George's Park. That itself is continuity. We've got a style of play that we believe will help us be more competitive in international tournaments, but we need to keep innovating around it, and I'm really confident with Gareth's leadership we will.
Okay, we'll go Andy Swiss next, then John Cross.
Gareth, was this an entirely straightforward decision, or were there any areas that you wanted clarified or any issues you wanted resolved before you made this decision?
No, very clear. We had, obviously last month was so hectic we were still debriefing the World Cup internally and then planning for the matches. So I was very clear that I wanted to be here. There aren't many projects in life that you want to be a part of and that fundamentally really both excite you but mean much more than just the work that you do. It can have an impact on so many things, and we saw that firsthand in the summer. We had talked to the players about that. I think it's hard for them to really appreciate the impact they could have until they'd had some progress and a degree of success, and then they could see actually what it means to people. So to be able to affect that and influence that is a real privilege, and it's a role I take with huge responsibility, but also that I really enjoy. I talked about driving through the gates every day. It's a great place to come to work. You smell the grass, you get to work in a game that I love and make a difference. So for me, that's everything you would want in a job.
Martin, you're obviously talking about sort of very ambitious plans about winning the Euros and the World Cup. Do you feel that's feasible within the next 4 years? Not to wish to put too much pressure on Gareth, but you can see what I mean. It's coming to a realisation that Euro 2020 has long been the target, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think in a way, the Euros might be more difficult because you've got a more concentrated group of teams. We know there are some very good teams in the Euros as well as England, so it's going to be a massively competitive tournament. It's kind of now a very English tournament in the way that it wasn't before we won a group stage as well as hosting the semis and the finals. So we do get some home advantage, but I think we're ambitious, but we're not going to be nailed to success being defined as finishing first, second, or third, because tournament football just doesn't work like that. But we want to see progress, and the progress will be, has to be self-evident. It's the judgment of the fans, yourselves, on how do you think England are playing? Are we playing in a way that consistently can help us compete with the very best in the world? And we know there's still a bit of progress to go on that.
Okay, we'll go to Nigel Adderley.
Martin, you'll shortly have a vacancy for technical director when Dan Ashworth departs. Would you envisage in the short or longer term that Gareth may take on some of those duties?
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to talk about Dan and the technical director role. I mean, Dan came here 5 years ago when this was a shell, and has basically built very steadily and I think intelligently a strong technical capability. And it's interesting, you talk about the span of control. It's not only has he got the development teams, all of the teams from 21s, seniors and downwards, but he has coach education, wider grassroots education, strength and conditioning. Team operations, by the way, is a big team. There's not a continent of the world that doesn't have some England development team playing in it at any month of the year, so that's a massive setup. So it's a massive job, and I wouldn't want to have Gareth distracted from his key purpose of getting senior team performance on the pitch. Gareth has got great pedigree in the FA. He understands the under-21 and the development setup. Of course, his input into the technical division is big now and will continue to be so in the future, but it is a specialist role. And I, for one, wouldn't want to distract Gareth from the important work of winning tournaments just for a short-term win, if you like.
Martin, I was going to ask, on the same subject, will you ask Gareth for input into that appointment, given the relationship between manager and technical director seemed to be very important in the last few years?
Absolutely. Once again, I think this press conference is about Gareth and Steve's contract, but it would be remiss of me not to call out Dan Ashworth. The massive contribution that he's made to building a technical function to support England shouldn't be missed. But more importantly, look, I'll really miss Dan on a personal level. I know Gareth will as well. He's a brilliant colleague, but he leaves it in great shape. And the next technical director is not going to rip everything up from scratch. We have an England DNA. We have a long-term plan. They're going to work with that. They'll hopefully improve it a bit and bring their own sort of personal touch to it. But continuity is definitely the watchword. To find a new technical director, absolutely, the chemistry has to work with the senior men's team coach. And we're going to take soundings from people in the wider game, just as we did as when we hired Gareth. So it's important that we get a number of perspectives in. Gareth will be a big part of it, because, I say, the chemistry needs to be good, but we'll also be encouraging other people to give their opinions too.
Well, just on that subject, Mike's essentially asked the question I was going to ask, but given the commitment we just made to Gareth, it does make massive sense that he has a significant say in who comes in, because if they don't have the same sort of views on how the thing should be run, then it's not going to work. So, can you talk us through the process by which you're going to select?
Yeah, sure.
Director? And will Gareth actually be on the selection panel? Yeah,
I'll say a few words, and probably it's best to direct that to Gareth as well. Look, I think there is probably a philosophical thing which I'll keep repeating, which is, the best will in the world, success for England over the next 20 years requires a long-term, consistent approach which goes beyond people. Gareth's going to leave at some point, and when we replace Gareth, we don't want that to be a drama, because we want whoever comes in next to build on the great work that Gareth and Steve has done. So we have to, in a way, take the personality down a notch and say, right, what are the things that we know are important? Now, people are important, of course. So Gareth and I have, of course, spoken about the process for succession, that there's going to be, there's a short list being, or a long list being drawn up. We will advertise the post probably next week, so we're going to get a lot of interest in it. The Rooney rule will apply, so we want to try and look at diverse candidates as well. But I'll let Gareth say it as well, but this is why it's Gareth's such an asset to the organisation, because he gets organisational, I guess, sensitivities. And what Gareth said to me recently when we talked about it, he doesn't want to have the veto on the technical director, because the technical director has to play a different role to the manager. But absolutely, the chemistry needs to be right. But there shouldn't be a misalignment of objectives, because those objectives exist and we'll recruit behind it. And if there's people coming in saying they want to rip it up and start again, they aren't the right people. If they're not going to be people that are happy based at St George's Park, they're not the right people. So I think there's so much alignment as to what it needs to be. But perhaps, Gareth, you want to put your perspective on it?
Yeah, I think firstly, regarding Dan, he's done an incredible job. I said last week at the FIFA conference, he walked into the room, we'd reached the semi-finals of a Senior World Cup. We were world champions at under-17s and world champions at under-20s, and he's got to take huge credit and should take huge pride in that achievement, because on a world level, I know we always look at ourselves, but on a world level, as we're walking around the room, the respect for English football is as high as it's been. And over the years, we've questioned coaching, we've questioned youth development, and I think a lot of the perceptions of those things have changed under Dan's authority. So in terms of the future, I think it is, of course, important working relationship between myself and whoever the technical director is. It's nice that my opinion is valued, and I think I've got a good opinion to give. Equally, I think it's dangerous if the senior manager has too big a say in who comes in, because I could be pushing a pal who wants the job for different reasons. So I think important that I'm allowed to express a view. I think I can help whoever comes in, because I feel it's important that everything is joined up, and that will hopefully be an advantage for whoever comes in. But I think the organisation will appoint somebody with the right values, and on the pathway that we're heading, we don't need to rip things up. It's not a wholesale change or build like we had when we moved into St George's and Dan took over. I think it's a different sort of task ahead of how we go from the position we are to keep improving.
Okay, we've got time for one more from Matt Hughes before we break for the squad announcement.
Martin, apologies for changing the subject yet again, but while we're here, could we have an update on how you're feeling about the Wembley sale after the board meeting last week and before it goes to council, and essentially how confident you are that you will get over the line?
I'm here to talk about England head coach and assistant, really. As you know, it got a good hearing at the FA board. They felt confident enough to put it to council on the grounds that I think it's in the best interest of English football, but we'll see.
Okay, guys, we'll end it there. We'll have a short break to allow you to digest the squad announcement, then Gareth will return to discuss that. Thank you very much.